Hello, everybody, and welcome to the World of Eora podcast. If you are here either because you're checking out the show for the first time, first off, welcome to the show. Really happy to have you here. Or if you are someone who was signposted here from one of my more recent episodes, then welcome to the show. It's really awesome to have you here, and I'm just going to quickly signpost you to some of the more foundational lore so that you can understand the foundations of this world, and then move on to whatever topics you want from there. So as a quick disclaimer, I am recording this shortly after the release of Avowed in February of 2025. I update this episode 0 periodically if I think there's anything foundational I need to address, or if there's going to be like new content updates, like if Avowed has DLC. But for now, this is the time frame from when I am now recording this episode. So basically how this is going to work is I'm just going to tell you some of the topics that are the most important that I think you should consider looking at or listening to those episodes to just understand the world and its foundations, and then I'll give a couple of Avowed specific ones, since that's a lot of the people that are going to be listening to this. That's probably how you found this episode in particular in the first place. Just to start things off and get this done quick so you can get into some episodes and content that you want to listen to, let's just talk about the show in general. I'm your host, Eric, aka Gingerino. Really happy to have you here. This podcast started a few years ago from this recording day, just kind of as a project to do podcasting in, for something me to break into podcasting in general. And it turned out that there was actually a pretty dedicated audience in the Pillars of Eternity community, which are two other games from Obsidian Entertainment, the creators of Avowed, that share the same world of Avowed. And I was just kind of creating content on Reddit, doing little lore posts. People were really enjoying it. And so I decided to launch a podcast, and they were very supportive. And the podcast would not exist today if not for the very supportive people on Reddit and Discords in general. And that's why it's been able to continue for all these years up until Avowed has been released, and hopefully for years to come. And so if you find yourself either getting into Pillars of Eternity or Avowed or all of the games, then this is a place for you to listen to the lore of the world. Whether you're familiar with it or you're brand new to it, you just want to revisit some lore about a world that you know and love, or if you're interested in learning more about this world that you're just getting introduced to, this is the podcast for you. I am just a regular dude who has a Monday to Friday job, and I just do this in my spare time. I do try to take it as seriously as I can to give you guys quality episodes to listen to, but I'm not going to break the bank doing it. I'm not going to put my quality time with my family at risk for that kind of a thing. And as a result, there has been a couple of content hiccups now and then. But generally speaking, I try to keep with an episode every single week. If there's going to be any issues, I'm very communicative about there being like every other week or something like that. It's been a really great adventure. I've loved doing the podcast, and I've met a lot of really interesting people as a result. And if at any point in time you would like to send me an email to let me know what you think of the podcast, let me know if there's any particular episodes or topics that you would like an expansion on or for me to discuss, you can do so worldofaora@gmail.com. You can also, if you want, just talk to me about games. I've been a gamer for 30 plus years, love talking about games, and it's always nice to have someone to talk to about that kind of stuff, so I totally get it. If you want to follow the show, you can do so at World of Eora on Twitter. And lastly, for those who are interested in supporting this show, you can do so at ko-fi.com/World of Eora. But I'm going to be honest here, I only provide that because some people find value in supporting the shows they like listening to. I have zero expectations for listeners to have to do that. As far as I'm concerned, I can make this content for free, and I want it to be available to anyone, so don't feel like you have to. It's just there if you're interested. All right, with that said, let's get into the episodes that I think are important for you to listen to.
I'm curious. What exactly did you find there?
So again, just to be clear, there are a lot of episodes I think are actually important, but there are a number of them that I think are probably more important if you're trying to understand the world at large, especially if you're coming to this show with nearly 150 episodes or something like that. Where do you start? What things are the most important to listen to? And so that's why I have this episode here. Now, as a heads up, any episode may or may not contain spoilers. The first one doesn't have any spoilers that you really need to worry about, but I am very communicative with spoilers, so if you listen to an episode, I will tell you if there are spoilers, and I then will give you a second warning before the spoilers come up, and I'll often put a little interlude there just to, give you a little extra space to turn the podcast off. So if you are worried about spoilers, don't worry. Any episode I mention here is most likely spoiler-free, but if there is anything in there, it's very well communicated to you. So let's start off. The first episode to listen to would be episode 1. Now, quick little heads up on that. This was very early in my podcasting, quote-unquote, career, and so the quality of it can change a little bit. I've re-recorded it a couple of times, so it's a little bit more updated than some of my other early episodes, but episode 1 is a good place to start. This is an overview of the world of Eora. I touch on all of the fantasy races that exist within the world. I touch a bit on the gods, as well as magic and the soul and the cycle of reincarnation that exists in this world. I touch on a lot of different things, and each different thing in that overview, I do have specific episodes about. So if you're listening to it and you think to yourself, wow, the fantasy race of the Orlan creatures sound really interesting, I'd like to learn more about them, you can go and find my episodes on Orlans. So that's definitely a good one to start off with, getting an overview. The next episode to listen to is about the gods, and that's episode number 7. And this is an overview of all of the gods of Eora. There are 11 of them, and they each have their own unique personality and things that they are gods of. It's a very interesting episode to get into. There may or may not be a little bit of spoilers in that one, but again, it's very well communicated. Episode 10 is about the Wheel, which is the name given to the cycle of reincarnation that exists within this world, which is kind of what it sounds like. You die, your soul leaves your body, goes into the afterlife, and then comes back and enters into a new body. Thus, the wheel has turned. So that's what the wheel is, the cycle of reincarnation. But if you want a little bit more about like how that works or what goes on, you can listen to episode 10. Episode 17 is about the science of the soul, which is animancy. And animancy, it studies the stuff that souls are made of. And I talk about that in episode 10 with the wheel. The souls are made up of something called essence. Like that's, your body's made of carbon, souls are made of essence. And so animancy is the study of essence and its properties, and it's an entire scientific field within this fantasy world of Eora, and it's very interesting, also very central to a lot of themes and narratives that we see in Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2 and Avowed. Episode number 23 is about the nations and superpowers within this world, so it's primarily looking at the major political superpowers that exist in the world of Eora, such as the nation of Aedir, which is where the player character from Avowed comes from. And so that's a good one if you want to have a little more of a political understanding of the world at large. If you're only focused on Aedir, I have other episodes of Aedir to focus on, but if you're wanting kind of a worldwide glimpse at who the major superpowers are, that episode number 23 is a good one to look at. Episode number 25 deals with magic and how magic works. I've already mentioned that the soul is made up of a thing called essence, but essence is more than just the soul. It's also in any form of life, and it's even in the ambient environment around you. And magic is always something that is engaging with essence. Whether you are stirring the essence around you to be reshaped into a spell, or whether you are trying to access the collective memory of some ancient thing and then use that to cast a spell. Magic within this world, in any form, is interacting with essence in some way. And so if you want to learn more about the magic system of this world, you can listen to episode number 25. There are a number of other episodes that I have recommended in the past as like the foundational episodes to listen to. But I think that that's a good enough starting point if you are wanting to just learn about the world in general. Now, because I'm recording this episode primarily for people who are new to Avowed, I'm going to give now some specific Avowed-related episodes that you can listen to. And I'll start off with the most important and end off with the lesser important ones, at least in my opinion.
If you find your trail has run cold, come to me with whatever you have. There is much I may be able to do for you.
So again, these following episodes are if you are new to Avowed or you're wanting to learn more about lore that is related to Avowed in some way, shape, or form. And so we're going to start off with episodes number 4 through 6 and episode number 103. These few episodes discuss the nation of Aedir. Episodes 4 through 6 is a 4 episodes doing a deep dive on the nation of Aedir. And again, the Aedir Empire, this is where you, the envoy, come from and where you hail from. And so that's why I do a focus on the nation of Aedir. So episodes 4 through 6 is where you can do those deep dives. Now again, those early episodes are a little lacking in quality, at least in my opinion, but I still think they're good enough to keep up there. Otherwise, I would have taken them down by now. So you can definitely do that. But if you're wanting more of an overview episode, you don't want to do 4 episodes deep, you can listen to episode 103, where I kind of do an overview to give you the best stuff of Aedir in one episode. Episode number 20 is about one of the gods of this world, and her name is Woodica. She's very important to the Pillars of Eternity games, and she's also kind of related to the game of Avowed in the sense that there are some major factions in the game of Avowed that worship Woodica as their primary deity. And so I think having a good understanding of that god and her clergy and her worship and her religion and her theology, I think that's a good one to look at if you're getting into Avowed and you want to understand a little bit more of the major factions and people around you. Although every one of the gods are interesting, and certainly other gods might be related to Avowed as well, such as Aethys, I do think looking at Woodica in particular is a very important one. So that's episode number 20. Episode number 21 is about the godlikes, which is one of the fantasy races that exist within this world. Obviously, you're going to be running into all sorts of fantasy people in your run-through of Avowed: humans, elves, Orlans, Namauans, dwarves, etc., etc. And godlikes are one of the unique ones. Your player character, the envoy in Avowed, is a godlike person. And so if you're interested in learning more about what godlike are, go ahead and check out episode 21. Throughout your playthrough of Avowed, you are going to be running into Pargrunan dwarf ruins. These are fortresses that are at this point in time crumbling and decrepit. You can also explore them for treasure and loot. If you're interested in learning more about the society of dwarves that created these ruins, and indeed actually still do live in the Living Lands today, you can check out episode 78 on Pargrunan dwarves. However, if you're interested in learning about the Living Lands in general, which is the actual setting for the game of Avowed, you can check out episode 82. I do have a little bit of a blurb about Avowed in episode 2. However, I recorded its own distinct episode later in this podcast's life when it was revealed that Avowed was for sure set in the Living Lands. So episode 82 is the one I would recommend over that. In playing the game of Avowed, you are going to have a number of companions that you can talk to, and I've done some companion episodes for you to look at, but I do want to give you a little bit of a heads up. I did these episodes before Avowed came out. They were just based off the lore that we had at the time. So I'm planning on doing more companion episodes down the road. Keep an eye out for that. They may already be out depending on when you're listening to this, but if you're interested in listening to the ones I have beforehand, then you can listen to episodes 84, 85, and 113 for any of the companions that you will have alongside you. And this, again, it's not a deep dive into the companions because I didn't have all the info about them. It's just a bit about their background and what may or may not be affecting them as characters. Next up is episode 102, and this is about Inquisitor Ludwine as well as the Paladin Order of the Steel Garrote. Now, the reason that this one is important is because in the game of Avowed, and you learn this very quickly, is there is a paladin order of people here called the Steel Garrote. Paladins are just like you might recognize from other fantasy media. They are martial zealots. Usually they center around an ideology, a philosophy, or a god, or a nation, or something, and they are martial zealots for that thing. The Steel Garrote in particular, they are all about worship of the goddess Woodica, and their primary agenda is to seek out people that they call Oathbreakers, which are essentially people who break legal contracts between each other. And the Paladin Order of the Steel Garrote hunt down these Oathbreakers and relinquish justice upon them, which usually means death via strangulation, according to the lore. So they're an interesting bunch to learn about. And the leader of the particular chapter of the Steel Garrote that is in the Living Lands for the game of Avowed is Inquisitor Ludwine. She's the leader of the Steel Garrote here. So episode 102 looks at all the lore of Ludwine and the Steel Garrote. Now again, that episode happened before Avowed came out, so it's not doing a deep dive from what we see in Avowed, but we do see Ludwine and we know of the Steel Garrote from before Avowed came out by interacting with them in the Pillars of Eternity games themselves. And in fact, in Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire, you can create a character who is a Steel Garrote character, or a priest of Woodica. And I highly recommend doing that if you're interested in looking at those older games, even if it's a different genre of Avowed. I still recommend definitely checking that out. Those are the major ones for Avowed. I would recommend those ones first more than anything else. If you have a little more direction that you're looking for, episode 32 is about Zorips, which are this little reptilian creature that you will run into a lot in your walking around the Living Lands. You will be fighting a lot of Zorips. If you want to learn more about Zorips, just for the fun of it, that's episode 32. As well, there is a particular moment where you interact with an archmage, or at least you have the opportunity to interact with an archmage. And so if you're interested in learning more about what is an archmage, what makes an archmage, and what is the circle of archmagi, that's episode number 35.
Is an oath worth the weight of a crown?
Thanks, everyone, for listening to this introductory episode of the World of Eora podcast. I hope you like what you hear, and I hope the information in this episode was helpful for you and giving you some direction on where to go. I recognize that there is a lot of episodes to chew through, and I tried to include little tidbits of lore throughout this first episode to, whet your appetite a little bit. But again, if you want to reach me, worldofaora@gmail.com is the best way to do it. And I really like having correspondence with people, and any feedback I can get, I will use to improve this show. Thanks, everyone, for listening to this, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast. I'm your host, Eric, a.k.a. Gingerino, and I'll see you out there.